The Zathari Empire had ruled across the stars for thousands of years. Their ships glided like silver birds, and their palaces were carved from shining crystal. To many species, they were untouchable, proud, and eternal. Yet behind the glittering image lay a truth that whispered through every hall of their capital. The empire was dying from within. At the center of this truth stood Queen Leora. She was tall and graceful, her skin a soft hue of pale gold that shimmered beneath the lights of her throne room. Her eyes were deep violet, carrying the weight of centuries. For 40 years she had ruled her people, always with dignity and calm. But there was one wound she could never heal. She was childless. The Zathari believed their queens were chosen, not only to rule but also to give birth to the next generation of rulers. An heir meant continuity, stability, and divine favor. For decades Leora had tried, but her womb had remained empty. Some whispered it was a curse. Others believed the ancient line of queens had reached its end. And though Leora never spoke of it, the silence of her palace at night felt heavier than any throne upon which she sat. As the empire weakened, Earth was rising. Humanity had surprised the galaxy with its rapid growth. While other races saw humans as brash and reckless, no one could deny their spirit, their adaptability, and their refusal to bow. The Zathari Council feared that one day, humans would no longer be allies but rivals. They wanted peace, but they also wanted control. It was in this climate that the council proposed a strange and daring plan. They would gift their queen, not in chains, not as a prisoner, but as a gesture of alliance to a human commander. By tying her fate to a human, they hoped to bind Earth's strength to their own. When the decision was announced, the court gasped. Even the stars themselves seemed to pause. For a queen to be given away was unthinkable. But Leora, after a long silence, accepted. She did not do it out of obedience to the council, but out of her own tired heart. If her life could at least preserve her people, then perhaps her empty womb had some purpose after all. The man chosen was Commander Elias Varen, a decorated officer of the Terran fleet. He was not the most powerful man on Earth, but he was known for his honor. Where others would see the queen as a prize, he would treat her with respect. At least that was the hope. Their first meeting took place aboard the great starship Aurora's Crown, a neutral vessel orbiting a red star. The Zathari Council, human diplomats, and soldiers stood witness. Leora entered the chamber in flowing silver robes, her face calm though her heart trembled. Elias stood waiting, tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp gray eyes that had seen too many battles. When the counselor announced her as a gift, Elias frowned. He stepped forward, bowed his head slightly, and spoke in a low voice meant for her alone. "You are not a gift," he said. "You are a queen. I will treat you as such." Those words surprised her more than any ceremony. For years she had been looked at with pity or judgment. Yet this human did not see her as broken. In his voice, she heard respect, and perhaps something more, a quiet strength, steady as iron. From that moment, their unusual journey began. The first weeks were tense. Leora was given her own chambers aboard Elias's flagship, the Resolute. She walked its steel corridors surrounded by humans who gazed at her with curiosity. Some bowed, unsure of her rank among them. Others whispered in awe at her beauty. But never once did Elias force her into duty or demand submission. Instead, he gave her space. He spoke to her as an equal during council briefings. He listened when she explained Zathari traditions. And though he rarely smiled, she noticed he always stood slightly between her and others, as if guarding her without thought. For Leora, this treatment was strange. Among her people, every look reminded her of her failure to bear an heir. Among humans, she was seen not as barren but as mysterious. Some of the crew even asked about her world, eager to learn. Slowly, she felt less like a symbol of sorrow and more like a person again. One evening, as the Resolute drifted through the quiet of deep space, Leora wandered into the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly, shining like scattered diamonds. Elias was already there, standing with his hands behind his back, You miss your home, he said softly without turning. She hesitated. A queen cannot speak of missing. A queen belongs where her people need her. He glanced at her then, his eyes steady. And where do you need to be? The question struck her. No one had ever asked her that. She had always lived for duty, for the crown, for the empire. What did she want? The thought unsettled her but also warmed something long buried. As days turned into weeks, a change stirred within Leora. At first it was faint, a strange flutter in her chest when Elias entered the room, a warmth when he defended her before doubtful human officers, a comfort in the way his presence filled silence. It was not romance, not yet. It was something deeper, trust. And then, something even stranger began. Zathari biology was known to be steady, unchanging. For decades her body had been silent, lifeless in its purpose. Yet when Elias was near, she felt faint echoes of energy, as if her very cells responded to him. Dreams returned to her nights, dreams of children's laughter, of holding life within her arms. She woke from them with tears she could not explain. One morning she stood before her mirror, studying her reflection. Her skin seemed brighter, her eyes clearer. She placed a hand over her stomach and whispered to herself, "Impossible. Perhaps it was only imagination. Perhaps it was only hope, cruel as ever." But deep within her, Queen Leora felt a spark. Small, fragile, but alive. For the first time in 40 years she dared to wonder, could the silence of her womb truly be broken? Life aboard the Resolute slowly shaped itself into a rhythm that Queen Leora had never known before. In the crystal palaces of Zathar, every step had been watched, every gesture judged. Here among humans things felt less rigid. The crew worked with discipline, yes, but there was laughter in the corridors, warmth in their eyes, and a sense that duty was not a chain, but a choice. Leora walked often among them, escorted at first by guards, until Elias quietly ordered otherwise. "She is a guest, not a prisoner," he had said firmly. From then on she strolled freely, watching humans repair starship panels, share meals, or sing softly as they polished weapons. These little things fascinated her. The Zathari rarely displayed such emotions in public. To see warriors smile, to hear engineers joke, it was strange and comforting at once. Elias himself was a mystery. He rarely spoke of his past, though. She could read the scars on his hands and the steel in his eyes. He carried himself like a man who had endured storms and learned never to bow to them. Yet beneath his hard edges, she saw something gentler. He was patient with his crew, respectful in his words, and careful never to treat her as less than his equal. One evening during a diplomatic transmission, a delegate from another alien race sneered at Leora. "A barren queen," the envoy mocked. "What use is she except as decoration for a human officer's ship?" The words burned. For a moment the old shame returned, heavy as a chain around her chest. Before she could answer, Elias leaned forward, his voice cutting through the hall. "Careful," he said. "You speak of a sovereign. My ship will not tolerate insults toward her, nor will I." The envoy faltered, his smirk fading under Elias's hard gaze. The meeting ended shortly after, but the echo of his defense lingered. Leora stared at Elias as they left the chamber. "You risked your standing for me," she said softly. He looked at her with calm certainty. "Respect is not a risk, it is a duty." Those words struck her deeper than he knew. She had spent decades carrying her crown alone, mocked in whispers, pitied in silence. Yet this human, who had no obligation beyond politics, chose to stand beside her. Something within her heart shifted, like ice cracking under spring sunlight. Days passed, and with them, strange sensations grew stronger within her. At first, she thought it was stress or the difference in gravity aboard the human ship. But the feelings deepened. Her body felt warmer, her steps lighter, her rest unsettled by dreams she could not escape. In those dreams, she heard voices of children, laughter ringing through the grand halls of Zathar. She woke with tears on her cheeks and a trembling, hand pressed to her stomach. She told herself it was only memory, only longing. Yet the signs multiplied. Colors seemed brighter. Food tasted richer. The silence in her womb felt different, as though something stirred in its depths. One afternoon, while in the medical bay, she agreed to a routine health scan. Human doctors were efficient, respectful, and curious about her physiology. They scanned her with gentle light, measuring vitals and recording patterns. She watched them quietly, certain nothing new would appear. But then the chief physician paused, frowning at the screen. His hands moved quickly over the controls. A second scan, then a third. His eyes widened. "Commander," he called softly, summoning Elias. Elias entered, his face sharp with concern. "What is it?" The doctor hesitated, then turned the screen toward them both. The display showed faint but unmistakable readings, patterns no barren body should produce. "There is activity," the doctor whispered. "Early signs of life." Leora's heart froze. For a long moment she thought she had misheard. Her breath caught, her hands trembled. She leaned forward, staring at the glowing lines. They pulsed like tiny sparks, delicate and real. "That cannot be," she whispered. Her voice. The news of Queen Leora's pregnancy spread through the Resolute quietly at first, then like a spark catching dry leaves. The crew whispered in awe. Some shook their heads, unable to believe it. After all, Zathari queens had long been told. They were barren if no child came by a certain age. Leora's condition defied every rule, every law, every scientific calculation. Elias handled the attention with calm authority. He ordered privacy for Leora, allowing only a few trusted medical staff to monitor her health. Still, the whispers could not be contained. Some humans called it a miracle. Some speculated that Zathari biology had finally responded to something beyond science, love, trust, or destiny itself. Leora felt the stirrings of new life within her, a warmth that spread through her body in waves. Every movement, every breath, carried a sense of connection she had never known. She had spent decades feeling empty, her crown heavy with expectation but her heart hollow. Now, for the first time in 40 years, hope bloomed inside her. Yet alongside hope grew fear. She thought of the Zathari Empire, of the council members who had pushed her into this arrangement for political gain. Would they accept a hybrid child? A child with human blood? Tradition ran deep among her people, and she knew that old ways die slowly, if at all. Elias noticed the shadow on her face and approached gently. "What worries you?" he asked. She hesitated, unsure if she could speak of her deepest fears. "They may reject it," she said at last. "They may reject me. This child may not be welcome in my own world." Elias took her hand, his grip firm and grounding. "Then we will protect it. Together. No one can take this away from us." His words soothed her more than any medicine. The bond between them, once strictly formal and cautious, began to grow. She found herself thinking of Elias not just as her protector or ally, but as someone who truly cared for her. She looked forward to his presence, felt calmer when he was near, and even laughed quietly at the stories he told about Earth's strange and stubborn ways. Meanwhile, the pregnancy progressed rapidly. Zathari physiology, combined with human biology, seemed to create unique results. Leora's body adapted quickly, absorbing nutrients with ease, her strength surprisingly resilient. Medical scans revealed a heartbeat unlike any seen before. A rhythmic, powerful pulse that made even the most experienced doctors pause. In the human fleet, excitement mingled with concern. Scientists from Earth were eager to study Leora, but Elias carefully limited their access. "She is the queen," he reminded them, "not a laboratory subject." One afternoon, as Leora rested in her chambers, the communications officer approached with a message from the Zathari Council. The tone was formal, neutral, yet carried undercurrents of unease. "The council requests your presence for a ceremonial report," the officer read aloud. They wish to witness your condition firsthand and ensure the legitimacy of the heir. Leora's stomach twisted. She had feared this moment. She had spent weeks building courage, only to face scrutiny from those who might never accept the miracle growing inside her. Elias stood by her side as they traveled to the council chambers aboard a separate transport. The hall shimmered with crystalline structures, towering pillars reflecting the pale golden light of the twin suns above. Council members, many old enough to have ruled during Leora's youth, sat in rigid rows, their expressions unreadable. When she entered, silence fell. She felt the weight of centuries pressing down upon her. One by one they examined her, their eyes flicking over her with thinly veiled judgment. A few whispered, but the majority kept their thoughts hidden behind practiced expressions. Finally, the High Counselor spoke. "Queen Leora," he said, his voice echoing across the hall. "We have heard reports, extraordinary reports, that you carry a child is unprecedented." Leora raised her head, her own voice calm, though her heart raced. "It is true," she said simply. "I carry a child. It is alive and it is healthy." Murmurs rippled through the council. Some gasped. Some turned pale. One older member muttered, "Impossible. Biology cannot." Elias stepped forward, placing a hand lightly on her back. "The child is a sign of unity, not division," he said firmly. "It represents hope for both our peoples." The High Counselor leaned back, studying her and Elias. He did not smile, but for the first time Leora saw a flicker of acknowledgement in his eyes, a recognition that what had happened was beyond mere politics. Yet even as relief settled in, a subtle tension remained. Some council members whispered behind their hands, suspicion and unease hidden in polite words. Leora knew that acceptance would not come easily. The child could unite empires, or it could ignite rebellion. That evening, back aboard the Resolute, Leora confided in Elias as she watched the stars drift by. "I never thought I would see this," she said softly. "To carry life. It feels impossible." Elias knelt beside her, taking her hands. "Nothing about you has ever been ordinary," he said. "You have faced decades of doubt and sorrow. Now you face something new, something miraculous. You are stronger than you know." Leora smiled faintly, a warmth spreading through her chest. "I do not know what the future holds," she admitted. "I only know that, for the first time, I feel joy." Elias's eyes softened. "And we will face the future together. Whatever comes, you and this child will never stand alone." For the first time in years, Leora allowed herself to imagine a future beyond her throne, beyond duty, beyond the silence of her past. She imagined a child's laughter filling her halls, the curiosity of little hands reaching for the stars, the blending of two worlds in one life. But even as hope flourished, shadows began to gather. Not all Zathari saw this as a miracle. Among the council and hidden factions, whispers of rebellion stirred. If the child were born, they feared, centuries of tradition could collapse, and some were willing to act to prevent it. Leora knew she could not ignore the danger, yet she also knew that for the first time she did not face it alone. Elias had chosen her, not for politics or duty, but for who she was, and perhaps together they could protect the impossible life growing inside her. As she lay that night, her hand resting lightly on her stomach, a faint kick reminded her that reality had finally surpassed dreams. Somewhere inside her a new life moved, fragile yet fierce, miraculous yet real. And for the first time Leora allowed herself to hope that nothing, neither politics nor doubt nor fear, could take it from her. Even as hope blossomed aboard the Resolute, a storm brewed in the shadows of the Zathari Empire. Not all council members celebrated the miracle of Queen Leora's pregnancy. Some whispered that a human's blood within the royal line was a threat to tradition, a danger to the empire's purity. And in secret chambers, a rebellion began to form. The leader of this faction was Counselor Veyron, an older Zathari whose eyes had seen centuries of rule. To him, the child was not a symbol of hope but of chaos. If Leora's heir lived, the empire could change forever, and not all changes were welcome. He called together a small group of loyalists, their whispers sharp with fear and anger. "We cannot allow this hybrid to inherit our throne," Veyron said. "We must act before it is too late." Meanwhile, aboard the Resolute, Leora's life moved forward with cautious joy. She spent her days learning human customs, walking among the crew and marveling at the vastness of space. The child within her stirred constantly, reminding her that life could be miraculous even against all odds. Elias remained her constant companion, always near, yet never overbearing. He treated her with care, listened to her thoughts, and never let her feel alone. One quiet evening, as the ship drifted past a glowing nebula, Leora felt a sudden pain. Her hands gripped the sides of her chair as she bent slightly forward. Alarmed, the medical officer rushed to her side. "It's minor," the doctor reassured her, examining the scans. "Just a reaction. The hybrid physiology is unusual. Your body is adjusting." Elias's hand held hers tightly. "You are doing perfectly," he said. "Whatever happens, we face it together." The danger beyond the ship, however, was growing. Counselor Veyron's faction began making plans. Scouts were dispatched to gather intelligence on human movements, and whispers of assassination plots slipped into hidden corridors of the Empire's capital. They feared that the Resolute's protection could not last forever. As Leora recovered from the scare, she began to sense the tension. She noticed subtle glances from diplomats, hushed conversations when she passed, and strange pauses in routine reports. Though the Resolute was a safe haven for now, the galaxy beyond held eyes that were both watchful and dangerous. One afternoon, as Elias walked beside her on the observation deck, Leora voiced her unease. "I feel them," she said quietly. "I sense the ones who do not want the child to live. They are watching us." Elias did not flinch. "Then we will be ready," he said simply. "We have strength in numbers, strategy, and trust. And we have each other." Her heart eased slightly at his words. With Elias, danger felt less frightening. He was not only her protector but her partner in this uncertain new world. And yet, even as she felt comfort, she could not ignore the brewing threat. Days passed, and the rebellion's actions grew bolder. A small ship approached the Resolute under the guise of trade, but the crew quickly recognized it as hostile. Alarms blared, and Elias personally led a defensive response, using both human technology and tactics adapted from Zathari strat intruders without bloodshed. Saint. The warning came too late. Scouts aboard the Resolute detected movement too near to ignore. A fleet of rebel ships from the Zathari Empire was approaching. Counselor Veyron had launched a coup to seize power, aiming to eliminate Queen Leora and prevent the hybrid heir from ever seeing the light of day. Elias stood on the command bridge, the tension sharp in his jaw. "They are not here to negotiate," he said, his voice steady. "Prepare for defense." The crew moved like clockwork, activating shields, arming weapons, and readying the ship for battle. Leora watched from the observation deck, her hand on her growing abdomen. Every kick of the unborn child reminded her of what was at stake. She was no longer a queen alone, she carried the future of two worlds. The rebels struck with precision. Their ships attempted to breach the Resolute's defenses, firing plasma, cannons that lit the void with violent color. Alarms blared, and the crew scrambled to maintain shields. Elias led from the front, coordinating maneuvers and directing fire. His calm under pressure inspired the humans and Zathari alike, giving them strength against overwhelming odds. Leora refused to hide. She moved among the command staff, offering guidance where she could, observing the tactics of both human and Zathari allies. Though her body ached with pregnancy, her mind was sharp. She remembered every lesson from years of ruling, every strategy she had learned in diplomacy and warfare. Amid the chaos, a rebel boarding vessel breached the Resolute's outer defenses. The ship's alarms sounded a continuous, piercing wail. Elias personally led a small strike team to intercept. They fought with precision, disabling the intruders while keeping casualties low. Leora watched through the observation windows, her heart pounding, aware that every moment counted for the safety of her unborn child. As the battle raged, she felt a sudden, intense contraction. Pain surged through her abdomen, sharp and urgent. The medical officer rushed to her side. "It's time," the doctor said. "The child is coming." Elias's eyes widened, but his resolve never faltered. "Prepare a secure area," he ordered. "Nothing will harm them." In the midst of gunfire and flashing lights, Leora was guided to the medical bay. The crew formed a protective perimeter, shields raised, weapons ready. Her body tensed with every contraction, yet her mind remained clear. This was the moment she had feared and hoped for in equal measure. Hours passed in a blur of pain and determination. Leora focused on each breath, each contraction, while Elias remained at her side, holding her hand, speaking words of comfort and courage. The hybrid child struggled into the world, a tiny heartbeat resonating with the power of life itself. Finally, a cry filled the room, a sound pure and real. The child was born. Human and Zathari traits blended perfectly: soft, golden skin, faint, violet undertones, eyes that sparkled with both curiosity and awareness. Leora held the newborn close, tears streaming down her face. She had done what no one believed possible. Elias looked on, pride and relief etched into every line of his face. "You did it," he said quietly. "Both of you." The battle was not over, but the cry of the child seemed to shift the tide. Rebel ships hesitated, as though uncertain how to fight against the symbol of hope in the medical bay. Loyalist Zathari ships rallied, inspired by the miracle. Elias ordered a counterattack, coordinated perfectly with strategy and courage, and the rebels began to retreat. In the aftermath, Leora cradled her child while observing the aftermath of war. Damage alarms still sounded, but the immediate threat had passed. She felt exhaustion, relief, and an overwhelming love for the tiny life in her arms. The crew, human and Zathari alike, treated the child with reverence. Even those who had doubted the queen now bowed in respect, acknowledging the miracle they had witnessed. Leora's authority was solidified not through fear or politics, but through courage, survival, and the enduring symbol of life she carried. Elias remained close, ensuring that both mother and child were safe. "We did it," he said softly. "They cannot take this away from us." Leora nodded, smiling despite her exhaustion. "It is more than survival," she said. "It is a beginning, a chance to show that two worlds can come together, through trust, courage, and care." That night aboard the Resolute, the Queen rested with her child nestled against her. The stars outside seemed to shine brighter, as if celebrating the birth of the hybrid heir. Messages of congratulations arrived from human commanders, Zathari, loyalists, and even neutral species who had heard whispers of the event. Yet Leora knew this was only the first step. The galaxy would not always be kind, and challenges lay ahead. But for the first time in decades, she felt the fullness of hope, the power of unity, and the strength of family. Elias knelt beside her once more. "The future is ours to protect," he said. "We will guide them together." Leora looked down at the small, sleeping face of her child and whispered a vow. "You will live, you will grow, and you will carry the best of both worlds. And I will ensure it, no matter what comes." Outside, the rebel fleet retreated, but their threat lingered like a shadow. The Zathari Empire had survived this day, but its future remained uncertain. One thing, however, was clear. The child of Queen Leora and Commander Elias would not be a pawn. This heir would be a symbol of hope, unity, and courage, a living bridge between human and Zathari. For Leora, exhaustion gave way to quiet joy. She had faced the impossible, endured fear and pain, and brought life into a galaxy that had long grown cynical. Now she and Elias stood together, guardians of a new future that promised not only survival, but hope for generations to come. The battle had ended, but the galaxy's whispers lingered. Queen Leora held her hybrid child close, feeling the steady rhythm of life against her chest. The child's presence was more than a miracle. It was a promise. It represented hope, unity, and the possibility of a future where humans and Zathari could stand together. Elias stood beside her, tall and steady, his eyes soft with pride and relief. "They cannot undo this," he said quietly. "No faction, no council, no rebellion can erase what we have done." Leora nodded, though exhaustion weighed heavily on her. The child had given her strength, but also reminded her of the responsibilities that lay ahead. Her empire looked to her for leadership, her people for guidance, and now, the universe seemed to watch, curious about this hybrid life that had come against all odds. In the days that followed, loyalist Zathari returned to the capital to help rebuild and stabilize the empire. Ships patrolled the borders, ensuring that rebel factions were unable to regroup. Diplomats arrived from distant systems, eager to witness the child and understand the implications of this unprecedented union between human and Zathari. Leora, despite her exhaustion, attended to her duties. She met with council members, held discussions with advisors, and oversaw the safe return of territories affected by the coup. But her greatest concern remained her child, whose eyes seemed already to reflect curiosity and intelligence beyond its age. Every heartbeat reminded her that life was fragile, yet enduring. One evening, in a quiet chamber, Elias and Leora sat together, their child sleeping between them. The twin suns cast a gentle golden glow across the room, highlighting the soft lines of the queen's face and the determined set of Elias's jaw. "Do you think they will ever accept this child?" Leora asked, her voice gentle but filled with concern. Elias took her hand in his. "Acceptance takes time," he said, "but they will see what we already know. This child is a bridge between worlds. It is proof that unity can exist even in the face of centuries of tradition, and you have shown them courage and strength they cannot ignore." Leora let her hand rest on the child's tiny head. "I only hope it will be enough, that our people will see the future and not cling to fear." Elias smiled softly. "It will be enough because they will learn from us. They will learn from you." Word of the child spread quickly, reaching every corner of the Zathari Empire and the human colonies. Some viewed it as a miracle, a blessing, that had been long denied. Others remained skeptical, wary of what it meant for the future of governance. But there were no acts of rebellion, no further attempts on the queen's life. The tide had shifted. The child's birth had inspired awe and hope even among those who had doubted. Leora felt a sense of peace she had never known. Her life, once defined by duty, loss, and the heavy weight of expectation, now carried meaning beyond politics. She had endured fear, navigated rebellion, and brought life into the galaxy that would be remembered for generations. Her child was not only a symbol of hope, but of resilience, courage, and the power of unity. Elias and Leora spent long hours walking together on the observation decks of the capital. They watched stars drift across the galaxy, silent witnesses to a new era. The bond between them had deepened beyond formal respect into something quieter, stronger. A partnership built on trust, shared purpose, and mutual care. One day, as Leora held the child, a young Zathari official approached cautiously. "Your Majesty," he said, I wish to see the child, to witness this future you have brought." Leora smiled, offering the child for the official to observe. The young Zathari gazed with wonder at the small life in her arms. "It is extraordinary," he whispered. "I never imagined that such a thing could exist." Elias rested, a hand on Leora's shoulder. "It exists because of courage, hope, and love," he said softly. The official bowed deeply,